What's up, guys? Today's video is something that I preach a lot, and something I really want to go over. And that's building a system. But I've made a video about how to build a system, but I've never really gone over my system. So that's what I kind of want to do. How I built it, why I built it, and how it works for me. So that's what we're going to start with here. So the reason I built a system was because I found I was very emotional when trading, and I didn't have a consistent way to win. So for me, when I went about building a system, I wanted to reduce these emotions, and then be able to be profitable no matter the market conditions. So I can play both puts and calls, any market condition, and be able to make money. And then, a big thing was that struggle with consistency. I'd take alerts, not take profits, go for those home run type plays when in reality, the smaller plays are the ones that really add up and help us to compound these smaller accounts, compound the bigger accounts even, and be able to be consistent and profitable. And then, the big thing for me with my system is just keeping it simple. I want to reduce all the information out there, all of the different things that I see on Twitter, all over the internet about stocks, right? I just want to keep it as simple as possible. And so that's what I did when I started to go about building my system. That's, that's all important, right? I'm going to get into kind of how I went about building a system. So the first thing I did was just really focused on taking the time to learn as opposed to taking these call outs that could be the quick money, right? There's no such thing really in the world where we can get this quick money fast. Fast money it's not consistent. We can't repeat it over time. And I really honestly just got pissed off with losing on call outs and having absolutely no clue what I was doing in the market. So I really just went about building this system, and that really helped me. The very first thing I did, and I'd recommend to anyone who's struggling or wants to build their own system, be self-sufficient, would be consider your own personality. I think this is something that's often overlooked, but very important, because the system should work for you, right? There's plenty of different systems out there for different personality types that work for them. My system it works for me, but it might not work for you, right? So my real big thing here is just build your own system, to be self-sufficient, to be consistent, and build that up over time. It's going to take some time. There's no real get-rich-fast scheme, as I just talked about, but building it up and building this own system is really going to pay out in the end. For my personality, right, I overthink everything. So I wanted to focus on simplicity and very technical, removing these emotions. This includes, scaling, stop loss, risk management, entering position, exiting position, stuff like that I think are really important and help me. The big saying I have is keep it simple, stupid. And I think that really hits and resonates. I have it here on my monitor, and it really helps me to get in that mind frame every day when I go into trading. Just keep it simple. Don't trade in between the zones. Wait on a call trigger reject or a call trigger break, in a 5-minute close above. And then, my system has evolved a little bit over the time, right? But the 3 core values have been there since I started incorporating the big aspect, which I'll talk about, is flow. But the key levels and the VPA were something from the very beginning that I liked a lot and really resonated with me, so I kept those. But now I just continue to add little bits and pieces every now and then to help boost my game just a little bit more higher and higher. The best way, personally, I could recommend to go about building a system after you incorporate this personality is just screen time. What works for you? What do you start to notice? And really practice things, such as key levels for me, VPA, and flow. Once you begin to practice these more and more, you get to become more acquainted with them, and you can really help use them to become profitable and to see things that others might not see. So that's something that I strive for as well, to put out to y'all, and to keep the information really simple and condensed, not the stuff when I started that was way too much info, way too much information overload. So that's something that I really strive for here. The first and most important part of my system, I think for almost any trader, is key levels, support and resistance, right? So I have a video over more specifically over just this key levels aspect, as I believe it's very, very important. But I'm gonna use PayPal here. This has been my baby for the last 2 or 3 weeks, almost a month-ish. But I haven't changed these levels in since that time, maybe adding an intraday level here or there. But one thing we notice is these levels have all been support and resistance multiple times, and I can trade off of them how they react to these levels. So I really mastered this ticker. In this case, when I first started, it was FUBO and CLSK were two. I didn't know much about bid-ask spreads with CLSK, so that one kind of hurt me from time to time. But I was able to swing these and really master the tickers. So then that helped me with learning price action, learning key levels. Key levels really help when I'm building my watch list, and they help me a lot with discipline. So when I go to identify key levels, I use that 20-25% method that Adam Silver talks about a lot. He has a video on it as well. But I want to see levels that have been hit multiple times, both acting as support and resistance. And basically, they're just pivotal points that can work. When I go about making a watch list, right, I use the 15 and the hourly to make my watch list to identify these key levels. So PayPal, for instance, this 189.15 has been hit multiple times. It's been hit, acted as resistance here, support here, resistance here again. So that's a very, very key level. Another one is these psych levels, 187 area, 185 area as well, have been acted as multiple times as support and resistance. So key levels often use those psych levels a little bit better just because that's how our mind thinks, right? Another thing when it goes to key levels and why I believe so strongly in them is because I believe in trading price action over indicators any day of the week. I'll argue that until the day I die. And that's because indicators oftentimes they lag behind, right? And the thing that we can see, the thing that's present is the price action. So we can trade what we see as opposed to things that are a little bit lagging, such as VWAP. I do use VWAP because a lot of people often use that as well. But other than that, I keep it really, really simple when it comes to using indicators. VWAP, VPA, that's it. I will throw on occasionally some Ripster EMA clouds when I'm looking for a swing trade, but that's something I'm not exactly 100% used to or developed yet. So the reason why, I want to go really into my reasoning behind key levels, right? So the first thing, the market is based off of the psyche of people, buyers and sellers. And this is how we can identify these levels, right? So that's why support becomes resistance, resistance becomes support, is because of the psyche of people, the psyche of buyers and sellers. That's why we can identify these key levels, and why we're able to use them is just based off of the psyche of people. Key levels also help me when I'm preparing to set price targets, where I'm going to scale. For my system, I always scale my first contracts. I scale in thirds. I scale my first one out at 20%, then the next big resistance level, and then I usually keep runners and keep adjusting that stop loss up. For me, I had set a hard stop loss at 15% just because it's a little bit easier to do that. And it also takes a lot of the overthinking out for me. Once I'm profitable about 10%, I move it up to break even. Once I'm at that 20%, I'll scale a third. The remaining 2/3, I have about a 10% stop loss, and then just continue to move that up by 10%, keep going, scale, next big resistance, and then runners. I'll usually move my stop loss to about 10% below wherever that big resistance was. I also believe heavily in creating a watch list. I think this really helps with the discipline piece of trading, as well as being able to identify key levels and price action where a price might reject or turn support or a breakout, and we can trade those calls to get nice gains. A breakdown on the flip side trades puts for a nice gain. My number one recommendation for going and learning key levels is just screen time. Throw in some levels, points that you've seen multiple times hit, and see how price action reacts to these levels. Screen time is the number one thing that's going to help with no matter who you are. And I strongly believe that. When we're going about identifying these levels, right, we want to look at levels that have hit multiple times and they've acted both as support and resistance. In this case, this 186.94, 187 level has acted as a big resistance here and then turned support. It was a support here as well. 187.75, this level here, it's another psych level, acted as support, resistance, turned support, and actually bounced off here. This is live of PayPal today. Bounced almost perfectly off that 187.75. I could have entered put or calls here and off of VWAP bounce. So that adds conviction and confidence in my trades. While key levels are definitely the biggest component to my system, support and resistance is something that everyone can see, and it really incorporates that psych we talked about. Flow is my second piece of my system, and it's the newest piece of my system, but honestly, I think it's the most beneficial piece when it comes to narrowing down information, creating watch lists, and finding these plays that have big time potential. That people, they'll post as 100% gains on Twitter. So I can really take that into consideration, and it really helps with breaking down that information that, as a beginner trader, I think is a really big thing that we struggle with. Flow has really helped me with, tying my entire system together, tying the VPA, tying key levels together to really find these plays that have the ability for big gains, either in the put side or the call side. So how I use it is I always use this hot chains and tickers. I'm a really big believer in watch lists because it really helps me with the discipline side and not taking a trade until it has either rejected my call or put level or confirmed a 5-minute close above or below the call or put level. So I always start here on the hot chains and tickers, and I'm just going to use Facebook for an example here. Facebook's been one that I've been pretty like to trade. It has nice spreads, pretty good movement. So what I look for when I'm looking through flow, I go to the today's breakdown in the top here. And what I'm looking for with flow is high volume OTM calls with a close days DT or days till expiration. So right here, when I look at this, 340 calls definitely sticking out. It's about $9 from our price right now, as well as this 320 put, which is $11. That's 121, 114, 330 puts also playing well. So that's something I really look for there. What helps a lot with flow is just narrowing down that information in all of these possible tickers, right? When we day trade, we need volume in order to get in and out of our trades faster. So staying on these first 1 to 2 pages of the hot chains and tickers ensures that we have that volume to get in and out of these trades, and really helps with our entries and exits being filled at the price we want in order to get the gains that we want and we could get. When looking through and really interpreting flow, it takes time and practice, same as key levels, same as VPA, same as everything when it comes to trading. But really looking for those high OTM and keeping it simple has really helped me. There's many people out there who are very good at reading flow, reading transactions, big transactions, and you can follow these big transactions. But the way I like to use it is when making a watch list for these possible big plays, as it incorporates that day trade and that impatiency that I personally have. I rarely hold overnight or swing trade simply because my personality isn't exactly suited for that. So this really helps me find those bigger plays, those bigger potential plays when I couple it with the rest of my system. For any system, I would definitely incorporate or advise incorporating flow in, as I think it does help a lot. And I was a very big, didn't really believe in flow until I started really incorporating it about two and a half months ago, because since then I've really seen a jump in the bigger plays I've been able to find, and the confidence in these plays, and also narrowing down the tickers to those 3 to 5 I focus on daily. And it really, really has helped me. The third part of my system is VPA, and VPA is volume profiles. So basically, a volume profile are these nodes over here. The bigger the volume profile, the more shares are traded within this range, right? So how I use volume profile is I look for these bigger nodes and then smaller nodes in between up to a bigger node. In this case, BABA has been one that's been moving really, really well. And we notice that over these this VPA profile here, the price moved pretty fast up, about $15, $16. So that's something we can really use there. In terms of intraday, we can use charts like the 15. So underneath this volume node here around 136.2, we could see a massive drop down here to this 132.7 level, which is really, really something that's helpful when we couple it with the flow, with key levels to help not only identify the bigger key levels, but it also can set price targets better. Also, identifying the possible bigger move, as well as where we're going to run into a big resistance or where we're going to run into a big support if we're playing puts. One thing we know about VPA is that price moves faster the smaller the volume nodes, right? So in this case, it's going to move faster in between here than it is in this consolidation period here. I really like the setup on BABA, actually. Now looking at it, we have two pretty clear support and resistance zones, so that'll probably be something I incorporate into the watch list for tomorrow as well. VPA really helps more as a way to really look where the bigger move could come from, as well as identify the bigger support and resistance zones, so it can help with the staying in plays longer or cutting plays if they do fall below these zones, and we're just wrong or we enter wrong when we think or have conviction on a key level or a trigger point. It really takes time and a lot of practice to build a system, but it's certainly well worth it. And it's a big reason why I've been able to become profitable after losing time and time again. But incorporating our own personality and realizing that we need to build the system around and for ourselves will help us more than it does, taking these alerts. And ultimately, the goal is to become self-sufficient and profitable. Another big piece of advice I'd have when going about building a system is just surround yourself with people who are smarter than you, who are successful trading, because this can really help not only push us, but also when we struggle, these people can support us and help us maybe ask questions where we went wrong, stuff like that. That brings me to another point, always ask questions, right? I'm more than willing to talk to anyone about trading, about anything. Maybe you struggled on a trade. Cool, reach out to me. I'll always respond to DMs. I try to respond as fast as possible, but sometimes, things get in the way, life happens, but I will respond at some point, and that's a promise to anyone, no matter what size account you have, how many followers you have, anything like that. In the end, this system works for me, and it might not work for everyone. So incorporate your own personality into building a system. Tailor it to your personality, and then also, think about your schedule. Some people work full-time jobs. Some people have mornings off. Some people have power hour off. Cool. Incorporate that and really base your system around personality and also your scheduling as when you have free time. My system is built on those three things, right? Key levels, flow, and VPA. And it's really helped me. But the first step was just identifying who I am as a person and what I struggle with. Once we find what we struggle with, we can adapt our system and change our system to help cut out these things. For me, it was that overthinking piece. I wanted to eliminate as many thinking things as possible, right? So I didn't overthink. I could just trade off of technicals. And I think that's something, that should be considered when we're going about building a system. My system, it's really simple, but it works for me. It helps me remain profitable in no matter the market conditions. And I think that's something that is really, really cool, because I don't want to be biased when going into a trade. I want to trade price action. And I think that's something I struggled with a lot early, but building this system has really, really helped me with managing these emotions and also becoming profitable. So that's something, it's really cool.